Right here. Well, that's the advantage of, you know, having my back right at the door, right? I can just hop up. Yeah, okay.
All right. Turn on some lights.
3:30.
Here we go.
Okay.
Log into the link.
I think we're supposed to tune into a new video channel, or a new Zoom,
Yeah,
Zoom
Zoom
link.
link.
Yeah.
There's like a ton of them at the end.
Yeah.
Yes. We didn't make it easy.
To both Zoom and YouTube.
Jenkins.
They have that. But Karen's restaurant, that's what I think. Hopefully, let us know.
Should be easy to find that link for me.
Uh-huh.
Haha.
I just looked at the agenda, the back.
On the back of the agenda.
Yeah, the one the email has the Zoom links to the rooms.
Yeah.
I think she had sent her that email, the last email. Let's see. Yeah, so
And a hell of a list of them. There they are. Aha, I found us. Yes. So we're definitely here. Let me put this together. Strangely, why am I getting this? Hold on. Session room 1, Zoom, this one. That's the one I'm in, and I'm showing up here. And it looks like we're broadcasting. We just don't see anything here, which is weird.
yeah, because I can see. You see the room? I can see the room. I can see it.
Yes, I can see us, but I don't see anybody else. Which we should be able to see our Susan.
I know our rest of our team members.
Seem to be absent. I'm trying to get some help. Good thing is we have a little bit of time. All right, is that what you guys are saying?
Yeah, that's the same thing I have.
Then where are other people? You should have
Which
two
is
people.
interesting because
You need
even
to take
this.
your computer with you, Scott, otherwise you're not showing up.
Oh,
Let's participate.
sorry. Let me grab it.
That's
they
one
can
problem
see,
that
so
we've
they
got.
can see us and we can.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, it's like I can't actually engage my computer or my computer camera. That's a,
Yeah, it's set up as a webinar, so we're
Yeah.
signing into a webinar.
yeah, it is a really strange setup.
Right.
So.
Well, it won't let me do anything either.
Yep.
Are you connected in your room?
Well, we can see the room,
Uh-huh.
but we can't see each other. Like, we can't see our online
Okay.
partners.
Philip's on his way here.
That's what
Okay.
I rang him. I figured we'll get it
Yeah,
fixed.
okay.
No sweat.
We just don't know how to get to the point where we can see the online people.
No, the only thing that we gave, I gave you the links. If nobody's using the links, you won't see anyone because it's only the room.
Well, how do we connect the room?
The room is connected. This is the Zoom.
Yeah, like I'm seeing us.
Oh, I
I'm
see.
connected to the meeting,
Oh,
but
okay.
how do I see the people that are online that are joining?
They would have to join the webinar and not the YouTube.
They're not joining, they shouldn't be joining YouTube, they should have the Zoom.
They should have the Zoom.
Yeah, if that's the case, then they haven't joined the meetings yet.
Oh, okay.
That's what I was like, oh no.
So you'll be able to see them once they join
Once they
in?
join.
Once they join in, they'll pop up on the screen.
Yeah,
Yes.
if they turn on their camera, yes, but if their camera's off, then you're not
Okay.
gonna be able to see them.
Then let me
So
see.
right now, it's only you and the room in this meeting right now. That's it.
Yeah,
Only you.
I know Kennedy's on.
Kennedy, you're
He's
in
on.
it.
So are you on the, did you go into this one?
I went into the one that was sent.
Oh, interesting. Let me see.
This room or this one, this link.
Yeah.
Maybe
If you could turn on your camera,
Yeah.
I can't even turn my camera. Do
Yeah,
anything.
it won't give us the option to turn on the camera. That's the weird part.
Yeah.
it's so strange.
Yeah, because I went in directly with the link that Philip sent us.
That's
Something's weird.
interesting. I know. You know what? I know what what's happening. These are webinars.
Yeah,
You're
it's set
in
up.
as an attendee.
Exactly what Kennedy
You're
said.
you're an attendee.
Yeah.
And because the breakouts didn't have any hosts or panelists set up because they're all on the main link. All right, I have to give everybody access. on those two computers. Give us a few.
Yep,
Yeah,
take
okay.
your time.
Okay.
So,
So I'm gonna see if I can send these the couple of folks that we have that are online, send them a message.
Yeah.
So that they don't
They
think
should
we
be
just
getting a
completely
new-
forgot. Let's see. I'm assuming they can see the chat. Chat's been disabled. Yeah, that was a mess. Well, you can just try something new.
I assume at this point, I'm not gonna even try to log in until
Yeah, I don't think you bother.
Yeah, they'll send.
I'm gonna be right back. Let me tell Karen to send some global emails.
Technology.
Yeah, you gotta love it.
Yeah.
It's supposed to make our life easier.
No, that
Right.
makes it more complicated. Okay, so there you go. Get a promotion to be a panelist. Oh, see, there.
Yes, I've been trying to say hello and nobody hears me. Same here.
Well,
Something happening? Hey, look, there's people.
we've been promoted to panelists, so
I guess we can use the link.
the same link, yes,
Yeah,
the same
same
link.
And unfortunately, I was scheduling conflict at 2:30. I let Michael know I have to leave at 2:30, so I'll stay as long as I can.
That's okay, Gail, don't worry about it. We realize you got, oops, I'm muted. We got other things going on. And I guess we're using the room, Mike. You can hear me, correct? That'd be a no.
No. So, you have to have a mic on? Oh,
Yeah,
now
that's
it's
weird.
echoing.
Gail, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Okay.
you. Yeah.
All right, we're good. All right. My role in this is basically to be here because this is a public meeting. So really, it's for you guys to have a discussion amongst yourselves about the questions that we've asked you in the agenda. So I'll sort of back away and hang out in the background, if that's all right. If you got any questions, I'm happy to ask as well.
Can the people in the conference room introduce themselves? Because we just see you labeled as conference room.
Oh, there you go.
Ah, okay,
There you
cool.
go.
Kennedy, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm still logging in. Give me 1 second.
I think we got it. You've all been promoted. How it works here, Dennis. God's coming online. I can feel it.
There we go.
Gotcha.
Can you see me? Microphone, speaker, video.
That's a webinar. You didn't get promoted.
I don't think he's been promoted
But
at all.
you're the
I'm not
link that we were on before.
Well, I just used the one that Karen
Yes.
That should be the one.
that we just sent, and I don't see a video option. I got audio.
We don't have, he hasn't been promoted yet, I don't think.
Okay, ask him to join in, and then I'll go and promote him.
Okay.
Yeah,
He's in.
Yeah, I'm connected.
You're connected?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We've got everybody else.
Sure, let me see if I can do it from here.
Yeah, sure.
That way I'm gonna. Nope. I'll go do that right now.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, you'll get a message through the window that says you've been promoted. And then you'll change your settings on your computer.
Okay.
So any initial thoughts?
Well, to start off, I would say, what are some of the bottlenecks that must be overcome? I would say that one is getting to the students, or getting to potential students early and often, in the sense of being able to say, by the time students get to college, there we go, join as panelists. by the time students get to that, college age, they're already fairly far gone, that it becomes harder to get them integrated potentially into the bioeconomy. And so, basically things like computation, biology classes, other things such as those need to be, I think, instilled in the students at a very early age, someplace going, in grade school. And I think that's where NSF could, and other agencies could make a significant investment by getting those students, hooked on the possibility of being contributors to the bioeconomy. So.
Able to hear you?
Susan, you can hear us, and Gail, you can hear us, correct? Yep,
Okay.
thumbs up.
So I can share something. I think another potential roadblock is that, I think it's just a wonderful idea to work across agencies to bring multiple voices to the table. And it all sounds really great on paper, but I also think these are entities that are accustomed to doing their own thing. And so, I just wonder if one of the potential stumbling blocks is truly bringing these agencies together in a way that they will collaborate and optimally not only identify the big ideas that need to be pursued, but then go after those big ideas. And the other thing along those lines, I think we also tend to approach these things with kind of blinders on too. And, I love the idea of bringing the research community in to have this conversation, but I think there may also be people outside of what we call our traditional research community who probably have some wonderful ideas to bring to the table as well. And they might be missed in this strategy. And I don't have a solution. But, I wonder if there's an opportunity to think more broadly about who gets a seat at the table to have these really important conversations.
Actually, Suzanne, can you hear me? Yeah, it's I was thinking about the same thing. When you bring industry and academia together, on paper it all sounds a good thing, but there's several challenges in terms of what are the goals? Our goals in industry is very different goal in terms of academia, in terms of what the end product should look like and how soon that end product should go to the table. The other thing also think about it is simply about the cycle, the timelines, right? Industry, in my small agreements we've had with industries about the timelines are very different. When we talk about budgeting, when you talk about they pretty much work on the idea that there has to be a product at the end of a time window, whereby in research it might be a much longer process than that. So it's about how do you merge those two timelines together and the goals, the end goal for each individual.
Yeah, I think the end goal point, it's very important. It's because is the endpoint a product, or is the endpoint training that next generation in areas of science that could benefit the bioeconomy, and doing that training potentially partially in an academic environment and partially in an industrial environment, so that you're making that connection. So I guess I'm thinking in terms of a product being multiple things, training the next generation, as well as, is there a biotechnology you're trying to implement? Is there a particular process that you're trying to develop? So I guess I'm thinking product means multiple things. So I guess that also, as you were saying, leveraging industry or other groups that we may not necessarily think about. Is there a way to say, let's bring it? So for DOE, we have we have a national laboratory complex. And we've been doing internships to bring people in to learn about the capabilities at those national laboratories. Is there a way potentially that you could bring together national laboratories. I mean, USDA has their laboratory efforts, and then with industry, with academics, to really develop a roadmap or a pathway for development of a process or a product. I guess I'm trying to connect all those different dots.
So that's kind of what's happening right now with just the various agencies that have come together, right? Is that that it's starting to coalesce. It's going to take a little while for everything to kind of gel. But it seems like it's on the right track of getting, all the various federal agencies that have a stake in the bioeconomy in the same room and starting to think about the same bigger scale questions.
So I'm going to have to bail in a few minutes, but are we trying to think about what particular research areas, or I guess I'm asking when we're thinking about what's the product we're trying to come up with for this discussion?
Exactly. That was the same thing. The question was, the product, what products are we thinking about, which would then give us an idea of priority areas.
Okay.
So I guess one of the products is people, right? Getting them educated and trained to be able to be contributors to the bioeconomy. And in other, by investing in people, even if they don't directly contribute to the bioeconomy as this is falling out, they can also they can still be contributing to the economy in general.
And as I thought someone had already mentioned how it's not just training people, but getting people interested in the topic area.
Right. And that goes back to my original statement earlier about getting, targeting potentially individuals earlier in life than just at the college area, level, just so that you can start them on that path to get interested in the first place.
I wonder along those lines, of another thing to think about is how we engage people once they're in the pipeline. I've been thinking about our conversation about postdocs, for example, and the dearth of postdocs from the States. And I wonder if we're seeing fewer and fewer domestic postdocs, in part because people don't want to be in training mode anymore. They want to be professionals. They want to be treated like professionals. They want to have the same sorts of opportunities, same kind of lifestyle that professionals have. And maybe instead of thinking about postdocs, we should be thinking more about the model for junior scientists that comes out of industry, for example. And, if we really want to retain people in this pipeline, perhaps the jobs they have in academia need to look a lot more like the jobs they have in industry, not just in terms of what they do and what's expected of them, life work balance wise, but also in terms of the benefits they get. For example, even our graduate students, believe it or not, are starting to ask us about retirement benefits. And, I hope they don't hang around that long, I'll be honest, but, if the grad students if that's running through a grad student's mind, I can't imagine it's not running through a postdoc's mind too. I'm 35 years old. I want to start saving. I want to have a house. I want to have a nice car. I don't want to work 80 hours a week. Can I do that and be in academia? And if my goal is not to be a PI, why would I stay in academia when I can go into industry and not only have all that and more, but also do the kind of work that I can explain to my family and, is going to lead to some sort of product early on.
Yeah, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, but the hard part is trying to break the U.S. out of that cycle, right? Of having, we think of having graduate students, then we can get postdocs, and then we become PIs, and just trying to change the mentality so that you can institute change. That's the hard part, because there's so much of an industry that's been kind of wrapped around with how we do science in the U.S.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And, we're talking about obstacles. I think another obstacle is just coming to some sort of consensus about what the real problems are, in addition to the human capital problem, that need to be addressed. I'm from a state that is supposedly purple, but it's really patches of red and blue. And, quite frankly, if you talk about things like climate change, if you talk about carbon remediation, you talk about fossil fuels, in some parts of the state, people's eyes light up, and in other parts of the state, they turn their back on you. So how do you, with that kind of patchwork in this one quote unquote purple state, how do you integrate that across this community that's going to have to come together to have these conversations? And even if most people in the community have bought into the idea that, human activity is driving climate change, ultimately it's the Congress that appropriates monies. How do you convince Congress people who probably had their last science course when they were in high school that this is not only a problem, but a problem that can and should be addressed?
And when you are talking about the training for the training and the shortage of postdocs, one thing we always have to go a step back and go back to the K through 12 system, right? We always talk about a broken pipeline, right? That pipeline is not going to be fixed at the graduate level, right? It has to begin way through the K through 12 system, where we actually training, we are providing STEM education, and we kind of have to change the way we are providing. Not at the K through 12, even at the undergraduate level, whereby if we are talking about producing graduates who have expertise, in different areas, right? So we're talking about not just a straight biologist, but someone who can do also data analysis, who's also good computer science, has some little information about computer science because of AI and everything else that's happening. It goes back to all that curriculum change, right? That has to occur within the system.
Mm-hmm.
Which as we all know, is not an easy thing. It takes time, especially in academia, and a K through 12 system too.
Yeah, I mean, it requires a lot of effort to change the momentum. Question is, how do you start that momentum? And right now, with the groups coming together, the various federal agencies, that's one way, but then you still need to deal with many other moving parts to get them aligned.
I guess we've talked about the private research area. Then we talked about people, right? That's on one.
Yeah, people, yes. Human capital. Capital. Yeah. Human capital.
And when I just thought about something else when we talk about bottlenecks, I think there's something, Suzanne, you talked about earlier on, is when you talk about bottlenecks and when you talk about the bioeconomy, how do you get that addressed across the whole spectrum between rural areas? I always talk about the south, the east coast, and the west coast, right? In terms of specific areas where there's a lot of research going on, and whereby you have these deserts within other states. So how do we ensure that this is equitable according to all the different areas of the country?
I guess in some cases, that's what you have programs like EBSCOR, right? Why they exist, to try to level out the playing field for everyone. So, yeah, something EBSCOR-ish would be potentially one mechanism.
I'm really intrigued by the focus on supply chain resilience, because it isn't something I had thought about, but I do think that's probably key going forward. What do folks think about that piece in terms of as a priority for the bioeconomy? And how do you, so I think our conversation is focused a lot on workforce and, engaging the next generation. I think depending on people's political stance, climate change can be spun as being exciting and sexy. And certainly I think food safety and agriculture is something that everybody can kind of get their teeth sunk into. How do you talk to young people about supply chain resilience in a way that makes them think, yeah, not only is that important, but I want to be part of the solution?
Oof.
Because I don't know. Throw that out there.
That's a tough one.
How do you make it exciting for?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, just taking a step back, right? I mean, who really controls the supply chains are the corporations, right? And it's nowadays so it's so, I guess, scattered in the sense that, if I am company X, I need to get, this set of bottles for this kit from company YZ ABC. And one of those companies experiences a problem and everything comes to a screeching halt. And so I don't know how you can get around that, because of the capitalistic nature of businesses. I mean, a lot of companies don't keep any inventory on hand that isn't going to be gone in the next few days. And then as soon as something takes, a nosedive, everything comes to, again, a screeching halt.
But I guess limitations in terms of supply chains. What if there are materials that are difficult to come by or difficult to make? Is there a way to think about research to make new substitutes or alternatives or different processes so that you aren't relying on something that is your bottleneck in the supply chain?
Right, but then, again, just playing devil's advocate, right? Who controls the production and then the inventory on hand, right? Everything nowadays is basically, soon as it's produced, it's pretty much going out the door, because otherwise something sitting on the shelf isn't making anyone any money.
Right, true.
So
I was backing it up to an actually more of a fundamental science question. Are there things in our supply chain that are difficult to come by or difficult to make that we could think of new ways to do that? Think a little bit out of the box. I understand what you're saying is that I don't want my closet full of paper if I only need this much paper right now.
Right.
So with that, I'm going for a different question to say, maybe we don't need the paper. Maybe we need something else that is cheaper or easier to make, or so I'm just trying to come at it from a slightly different direction.
No, that's a great question. Yeah.
So from a workforce development point of view, I wonder if, one way to recruit folks into studying this is to talk about the idea that we're so interdependent on places across the globe to do and make the things we need to do and make. And perhaps there's a need to become somewhat more independent. And so we need more folks in STEM disciplines who are equipped to help make that happen.
Yeah.
Kind of a national security argument almost.
Is there a role for AI/ML in addressing the challenges and with supply chain?
Oh, I'm sure there is, yeah.
So I'm wondering if that's a way, as we think about what the next generation may be interested in. And I know there is great interest in AI/ML, at least from some of the more early career folks that I interact with. Wonder if that's a way to bring people into what is a really challenging topic, but may not be something that they necessarily prioritize.
So focus on the skill set rather than the application. That's an interesting point, yeah. What do people think about enabling crosscuts? I find that really fascinating too. I'm at an institution that prides itself on being just so incredibly interdisciplinary and doing all kinds of cross-cutting things. But in the end, we very often tend to retreat to our disciplinary silos where we feel warm and comfy and we take care of our own, so to speak. How do we accomplish that piece? Maybe your institutions have found a way. Mine certainly hasn't.
No, I agree. Everyone's kind of siloed in their own way. I mean, at the institutional level, there's opportunities that if the institution wants to invest in it, to say, here are opportunities that we want to seed cross-disciplinary work, and we'll do X, Y, or Z to help the groups come together and be successful. But that again, requires an institutional investment and determination to accomplish.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So Suzanne, you were saying that your institution is prides itself on cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary. But that you feel like people sometimes retreat to their own disciplines. Is that a communication challenge? I'm looking at one of the questions about what bottlenecks must be overcome. Is it, do people retreat to within their discipline because it's difficult to communicate across disciplines? Is that one of the bottlenecks, or I'm trying to figure out what's the bottleneck that causes with good intention, people try to be multidisciplinary, but as you said, it's much more challenging than I think we anticipate. So I'm wondering what one of those bottlenecks might be.
It's a great question. I appreciate it. I think some of it is communication and not speaking the same language, so to speak. I think it's probably even more related to a perceived lack of resources and this natural tendency to protect what's mine when I'm afraid that you're going to get more than me.
Yeah.
And just as an example, we like every place, we realize that the leading edges are at the intersections of fields, and we talk all the time about developing interdisciplinary graduate programs that allow students to sample different fields before they make a decision, and then ultimately to work at the intersection of fields. But the challenge is, the student in that position, for example, they work for PI who loses a grant. Well, guess what? The student is left high and dry because nobody claims them. They're not a student in Department X. They're not a student in Department Y. So who's gonna pay for the student if the PI can't? Those are the kinds of things that we run into, just as an example. One thing we do have that's an advantage here over every place else I've been, We actually have an office within the provost's office that focuses on interdisciplinary everything from education to research, the whole 9 yards. So there's a convening point on campus that theoretically can mediate these kinds of conversations. But it's still a challenge.
Thank you. I'm afraid I have to leave for another meeting, so, but thank you for the conversation.
Nice seeing you.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
And these are big questions.
What about the human health side? You know, coming out of the pandemic, I would think that disease ecology becomes more and more important here. And you know, that seems like a place as well where, you know, NSF has tended to put guardrails around things that are biomedical. For obvious reasons. There's that big behemoth on the other side of the river that's got all the money. But disease ecology, it seems to me, or One Health even, is a place I think where the NSF and the NIH mission areas really do collide or come together or could come together in ways that I think could be very beneficial.
And especially on the side of predictive modeling, right? So if we could, whether we talk about modeling for diseases and predicting it in terms of our human health, I mean, I guess that's something that would fit more the NSF side of aspect. And that's what's crucial, part of the crucial thing right now.
Has the budget changed?
Sorry, that was me.
Oh, okay. Has the budget changed for, was it ecology or infectious disease?
Has the budget changed, you mean since it started up to now?
Yeah. Has it gone up?
I would say it's probably been pretty stable.
Okay.
I would say it's probably been pretty stable. Although EEID, the program within biology, has done a really good job of pulling partnerships. So they've got strong partnerships with NIH. So it's not just leveraging NSF money. It's not just using NSF money, it's leveraging other folks' money as well. So they've been good at pulling in partners. But I can get you the answer, but I'm not sure the budget has grown.
Okay, I was just curious.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
It's a good question. And it's a conversation, relating back to what Susan said earlier, conversation where we put those fences around things to keep the biomedical out. A lot of the times, part of the conversation that we have is disease state versus natural states, like how a system works. Is its natural state, this is how it works, versus what the NIH does is disease state, right? Mm-hmm. And so sometimes that conversation helps us more clearly delineate where we're at or think a little differently than where we're at, because a lot of times we get bogged down in this has to do with health or this has the potential to do something with health, and not realizing the fact, or not sort of focusing on the fact that this is understanding how a natural system works, whether that's an organismal system or an environmental system or whatever, right? So it's how you frame it a lot of the times.
Right. Interesting.
I thought one of the earlier comments that Gail made, this is going back a little bit in the conversation, focusing on skills rather than Suzanne, you said it, focusing on skills rather than the application. That resonated for some reason really well with me, because it would be an interesting, if you had a community of people, right? And you began to think about what interests them, what they want to do, what they believe they're good at, what they're excited about, and focusing that energy onto a specific application, right? A solution to something in their community. It's a much stronger way to motivate people rather than saying, we're going to do good research in climate change, or we're going to do good research in whatever. I thought it was kind of I don't know how we'd work with that at NSF, but it's definitely a different framing of the issue, I think, or a different approach to getting people engaged.
Right. That's always the trick. And lead a horse to water, but can't make them drink.
Right. You might be interested, I think the example was, you might be interested in artificial intelligence and machine learning, but you've never really contemplated the fact that that could actually be used towards something like supply chain resilience. Right.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you don't really care about supply chain resilience. You just want someplace to unleash your energy. And so you give them that. That's an interesting thought.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, I think it goes back to another part of our conversation, which was whether the research sector in academia could be modeled to look more like the research sector in the corporate world. In the corporate world, you have a set of skills and projects come your way and you plug and play, So
Right.
today I'm working on project Y, tomorrow I might be working on project Z. I'm still leveraging my skills. I'm doing things I know how to do, doing things I enjoy doing, but I'm applying them to different problems. Maybe that's something we ought to be thinking about in the academic sector too, especially, since we do have a generation of folks who aren't necessarily interested in being faculty members or running their own research projects, but are still really keenly interested in science and really, really, really want to make a difference.
I personally love that framing, but I should probably keep my mouth shut. Because I know for myself, I had an interest when I was a kid, but it didn't line up with anything other than science. And then you realize where you might be able to, it wasn't until years later where you actually realize you might be able to apply it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The other advantage of it, I think, is that, if nothing else, the corporate sector is really good at being nimble. If something changes, if there's a change in the market or a new need arises, you pull the people off of one plug and play and you plug them in someplace else. In academia, we're not as good at doing that. We're like the Titanic. We keep steaming toward that iceberg and, turn iceberg, where? Right there, dum dum. So, I think it.
Is part of that due to the way we fund our projects?
Yeah, I think it is. I think
it is. We're not flexible at all, right? So industry can move money wherever, the new thing in town is, right? But I think most of it how we do the budgeting, right? If I hired you on this project and the grant is a 5-year project, I guess we want you to be there 5-year project working on that specific item, which it might have changed by the time 5 years is up, but the funding agency still gives you the money for 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. That's a tough one to crack.
I think the one thing on the list we haven't touched on at all really is climate change. What priority research areas might there be in that arena?
Yeah, well, I mean, obvious ones are places like, the Plant Genome Project program. That would be one area. Because that you can easily see the intersection between climate change and the bioeconomy. But I mean, I think all all the bio programs have some kind of wedge overlap with climate change in general.
So I'll bring up a topic. I know we're going to be talking about it in the next session, which is infrastructure as a bottleneck to all of these things that we want to approach. Are there any issues that you see in the infrastructure piece? And I mean, it's infrastructure all the way from training to tools that you use to do research. It's everything, right?
Right.
I think we split them because we think infrastructure is actually a big piece and it's probably standalone. You could talk about it by itself. But to be really honest, since you're kind of in the workforce space, I'm hearing a lot of conversation about workforce from this group. Is there infrastructure about workforce development that you can think that's innovative? I mean, feel free to be creative.
Yeah, so I would reiterate my point about getting people trained earlier in their educational experience, or getting them enticed into the bioeconomy earlier on. So that would be, again, going back to the human capital.
How would you do that?
So, I mean, there's a ton of different ways. So, like for, say, computation, nowadays you can buy $5 computers and give them to the kids.
Yep.
And we did that as part of an REU. And the woman who came for the REU, basically, we saw her at a meeting at it was a symposium the next year afterwards. So about 1 or 2 years later. And she said her little brother had taken the computer and was using it now.
Oh, that's neat.
And so, for $5, you impacted 2 people and got them interested in computation.
Yep.
So, just little things like that whole school districts could do, broader impacts could do.
Yeah. And it goes back to finding that child's interest, right?
Right.
They didn't know computation was their thing, and then they met the object
That got them. Right, exactly. And when you got a low price point, it becomes economically viable to do.
Yeah.
At a broad scale.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I think another piece of it is showing them there's an application that is to a problem that's of interest to them, that's important to them.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to what we talked about before, having the skill set, right? So that student might not know what job that's sitting out there in terms of what they can do, but they know they like this tool that they can play around with and program. And they can apply that to any situation that's out there. Yeah.
I think another piece of this is engaging institutions where they live, so to speak. I really like the idea of empowering smaller, less well-resourced institutions that are never going to have super strong wet lab facilities, but do have brilliant people who can solve problems and think critically and think creatively in ways that they can complement the kinds of things that do happen at places like Duke, for example. And I've often thought there's merit in developing some of the MSIs, for example, the smaller MSIs as reservoirs of strength in computation. Because, again, you may never have a fully equipped cell culture facility or an electron microscopy facility or cryo-EM on your campus, but I bet you got a computer, and I bet you can do some pretty high-powered computing, even if you can't do the wet lab research.
How about common infrastructure? Something that you said, Suzanne, made me think like a DIY maker's lab for biologists.
I love that idea.
Right?
That's neat. Yeah.
That would be really cool to put in places where those kinds of things don't really exist.
Yep. That's a cool idea. What was the it was probably like 5 or 6 years ago, NSF had it was a competition. Was it the Big Ideas competition? People came together and
Yep.
What came of that? What I'm sorry, no pressure, but I thought it was crowdsourcing, right? I thought that was a really cool idea.
Yeah, there were some nice ideas in it, but to be really honest, I'd have to go look to find out exactly what came out of it. I don't know what the spin-offs have been, to be really honest. It's a good question.
It just seemed like such a neat idea. And in a lot of ways, I think Casa Bio is sort of kind of doing the same thing, isn't it? A little bit.
It's trying to. It's trying to. I mean, the real goal here is to get agencies to come together and find commonalities. If you can find, if you can find those, that maybe we can approach these things, as I kept saying, together, better together than separately. Because as you said, Suzanne, we have a tendency to, this is our space, we're in this space, and we'll just do it our way. We'll follow this path that we've created for ourselves. And the reality, there's a lot of intersections in those paths. That's just the facts. And we'd love to be able to take advantage of those. And to my knowledge, and everybody that I've spoke to about this kind of activity, this has never been done before, where you've gotten this many agencies together and said, you've all put out these goals for yourselves. Did you ever think that there might be some, interaction between those goals? There might be some staging that could occur. I mean, NSF is kind of foundational to all of that. It's the discovery aspect, right? It cuts across a lot of the spaces, everything from climate change to supply chain resilience. There's all aspects of fundamental science that are in those. So we could be the base for anything. But if you don't, we could strategically put ourselves in the right places if we knew what other agency interests, what other interests the agencies had, and where their priorities were a little bit better. We could begin to see where we could be strategic. That's my hope, with my fingers crossed.
I think that's wonderful. And it reminds me of something we talk about on campus, especially in roles like mine, where you're kind of in the center, and to get the things done that you need to do, you typically have to partner with somebody. The partnering works best when everybody's got skin in the game. So, when the gentleman's handshake and, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, right. Put some money on the table. Now you're going to do it. Now.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. All right, we get a break at 2:45. We've got 2 minutes left. I want to hear from one of you on what we've talked about. I think this has been a good conversation. I think there's a lot of ideas that have been floated here, and a lot of interesting roadblocks, to be honest, to talk about. So this has been great, very useful to me. And again, I take all of this information and I try to weave it into the stuff that I'm doing. And right now, my big focus is this Casa Bio activity. So I'll take as much of this kind of advice and run with it as much as I can. So I really appreciate this.
Thanks for the opportunity. And I apologize. I too have to take a meeting at 3:00. I won't be there for that session.
Okay.
We can all team do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
Tag team it.
We'll tag team the report.
I'll be there in spirit.
in spirit.
Thank you.
I don't want to keep you guys for your break. Go grab a
Okay.
donut or some granola. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thanks, everybody.
See you in the
Bye.
main room. Yes.
I think I'm gonna leave that, your camera's still going, by the way. We're gonna watch you walk around.